Welcome to Fear and Greed, the week ahead. I'm Sean Aylmer, and as always, I'm joined by economist Stephen Koukoulas. You'll find him at thekouk.com, thekouk.com, and on Twitter using the handle thekouk. Stephen, good morning.
Good morning, Sean.
Well, let's start with last week. Cracking week with the Reserve Bank board meeting.
Yes, now they went the 50 basis point interest rate hike, taking the cash rate to 1.35%. Not a lot of surprises, I suppose. It was just a matter of how much they would hike. A little bit of a chatter whether they'd go more than the 50. But at the end of the day, I think they've decided to just go a little bit more softly. Obviously, inflation's the main game for them. They think that inflation is going to continue running along for the second half of 2022, so they wanted to hike rates. And they signalled very plainly that there are more hikes to come in the months ahead.
Yeah, it's only when you read the language of the last couple of months, they're just out and out saying, there's not even hinting really, they're just telling us rates are going to go up.
I think the only thing that they discuss at the board meeting is, do we go 25 or 50 or maybe 75? The thing that'll be dominant for them next meeting in early August will be that they're meeting just after the June quarter inflation numbers come out. Now, if it's surprises on the low side, you never know. Maybe they only go 25. If it's sort of as they expect and inflation's around about 6% year on year, heaven forbid, they'll probably go the 50. Or if they get a nasty shock and it comes in, way higher, they may well go the 75. And I think that's the only game that we'll be playing in economics land to work out what they do. It really depends on that inflation number at the end of this month.
I'll get on to jobs in a moment because obviously this week's a big week for jobs with the labour force data coming. But before we leave last week, massive international trade surplus for May.
Yes, a record, almost $16 billion for 1 month. It's sort of quite incredible. Coal was the driver, both price and volume, it appears. We don't get the volume numbers like the tonnages, but we know that the coal price has been very elevated. This is for the month of May, but $16 billion almost for one monthly trade number. And that actually includes a pretty decent lift in imports, that pickup in machinery and equipment and capital goods and consumer goods. So in a sense, it's a sign that domestic demand is doing okay too. But wow, what a surplus. It was staggering.
I always find it interesting. We have been worried about tariffs placed on Australian exports by China. Coal always used as an example. We're selling more coal than ever.
We're selling it to other countries, clearly. And again, I guess it's this Ukraine war crisis on energy that's causing a lot of other countries to import coal. And even, the linkages, I'm not exactly sure how they'd be working, but if you're getting a lot of the European economies buying coal from some of the other economies, then Australian suppliers can pitch in and fill that gap.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, it actually makes for a more sustainable future when you've got a bunch of buyers as opposed to just relying on one.
Well, one of the issues that's been around for some time, not so much in coal, but just broadly our export position, we still have, well over a third of our exports go to China. And of course, if the Chinese economy does something either from economic fundamentals or, dare we say, geopolitical reasons, that there's some tension builds over Taiwan, then, Australia gets caught in the backwash of that.
Now, this week, big week in many ways, labour force data for June is out, and then also consumer and business confidence figures, and they're sort of increasingly important. But let's start with the labour force data. Can the unemployment rate go lower?
Look, I think it can. I think it will. Obviously, the monthly labour force numbers are a bit of a lottery. But we know that the job ad series through May and June was strong. The various vacancy series were booming. We've spoken about that in the past. And the anecdotes still that there's real difficulty obtaining workers suggest to me that we're probably going to see another gain in employment, something of the order of 10 to 20,000 jobs. And the unemployment rate hits a fresh 48-year low of 3.7 or 3.8%. It'll be something that we've rarely seen.
Now, given all the bad news we've had recently, and there seems to be a run of it really in the last 4 or 5 weeks, where do you think consumer sentiment and business confidence is at?
Well, there's a big gap between the two. It's already opened up, so I wonder whether it's going to continue this week. But consumers are obviously under a lot of pressure, feeling the pain, if you like, from cost of living, petrol prices, lettuces and beans, and let alone interest rate hikes. So we consumers, even though we're still spending, the retail sales numbers are still, pretty strong. we're feeling a bit gloomy. Our well-being about the economy's taken a bit of a hit, whereas the business sentiment, the business conditions numbers that the NAB produced so beautifully are showing the business sector's doing okay, that they've got decent forward orders, that they've got an inventory build-up that's occurring, that they're demanding more labour, so it feeds into that employment narrative again, and that their selling prices and input costs are going up. So the NAB survey is really diverging in terms of business conditions from the Westpac and the ANZ surveys, which are showing consumers feeling a lot of pain.
Why is that?
That's the $64 question. In fact, more interesting to me, as I was just touching on a minute ago, is that while we consumers are feeling gloomy, the retail spending numbers are very, very strong. So I don't know whether it's retail therapy. We're feeling grim, so let's go and spend some money. But
we can get a job too. Like there's always.
I think that might be it, that employment's strong. And I dare say when we get the wages numbers for the June quarter eventually, maybe, just maybe, we have had a pickup in wages. And so that income boost, the employment boost, is feeding into extra spending, even though when we're surveyed, we say, oh, gee, I don't like high petrol prices, I don't like these rate hikes, and I don't like the cost of living pressures, so therefore I'm going to answer the consumer sentiment question in the negative. Whereas businesses are saying, well, okay, they're confronting some cost pressures, but you know, as we're seeing from the export side, if you're an exporter right now, you'd be ticking the "I'm really, really happy" box, along with a lot of other parts of the economy where there's, you know, still a degree of momentum.
Yeah, Stephen, have a great week.
You too, Sean.
That was economist Stephen Koukoulas, better known as The Kouk. You can find him at thekouk.com and follow him on Twitter using the handle The Kouk. I'm Sean Aylmer, and this is Fear and Greed, the week ahead.